We're back in the Gunners Club.
Well, thanks for joining us as well on a Saturday night.
Oh, what a good night it is.
Aussie beers we're talking about today. And what is more Australian for beer than a VB? Here it is, the longneck.
It is? My God, that goes back a long way.
Yeah, it goes back a long way. In fact, they've been brewing this since 1854, if you can believe it. And for quite a while, it really was a perennial favourite in all of Australia, particularly in Victoria. Anywhere you go that sold alcohol, you'd pretty much trip over it.
It's either that or the straight out Carlton Draft.
For sure. Which one was a favourite of yours, the Carlton Draft
Vic,
or the VB?
The Vic, definitely.
Yeah, I'd go for the VB as well. And it really had the style of being the beer for the working man, for the everyman. In fact, it was so Aussied up that even one of the actors from Crocodile Dundee was the voice behind the VB commercial.
That's it.
But what happened to VB? I mean, it really was the market leader in the whole of Australia, not just for the state of Victoria, where we're in. It's fallen to 5th place in Australia.
Yeah. The old Carlton United breweries. Growing up, that was pretty much the only beer that you ever heard of was from Carlton United, and they had a whole different variety of them. And then Courage came along. Do you remember Courage?
No, before my time.
The one with the rooster on it.
You see, he's going to pull out a papyrus manuscript as well to show me where it was first advertised. But you have actually worked behind a bar as well, and you would have pulled quite a few pints of this.
I did. Actually, having said that, it was mainly Carlton Draft that was a tap beer. Mm-hmm. Unlike today, where you walk into any bar and they got 6 taps with different varieties of stuff on it. It was... It was either Melbourne Bitter or it was Carlton Draft on tap, and that was it.
Now show me, I think you've got an example of an old Carlton Draft.
Yeah. Do you remember the old tin cans?
I remember trying to crush them as a boy with my hands when I'd find them on the road.
With a ring pull. Now, the logo on that thing, they don't produce that anymore, obviously. It's a tin can, not even aluminium.
And look at the classic stitching down the side as well of the seam.
Yep.
It's glorious, isn't it? And unopened as well.
Unopened!
Yeah, it's a bit of a find.
That is.
So what happened to VB? How did they lose their way from being number one? Did they just fall out of touch with their market base like some beer companies do?
Like some beer companies do?
Mm. Well, let me tell you what I think happened. I think they lost touch with their market. There were a few missteps that they had. They now rejoice in the fact that their alcohol level is back to 4.9%. Now I say back because you might remember in a previous video we talked about how much tax is on alcohol in Australia. They decided, some accountants, some boffins, some bean counters, that they dropped the alcohol down from 4.9% to 4.8%. and just count the profit as the money continued to come in. And if that wasn't a good enough idea, then a few years later they dropped it again from 4.8% to 4.6%. Well,
that's because the tax is paid on the amount of alcohol.
Exactly right.
In the booze, yeah.
But how do people feel about paying the same amount for less alcohol?
Yeah, that's it. Well, they also lost their customer base as a result.
Yeah. So let's try it. Crack it open. This is the iconic long neck of the VB.
This this isn't a twist top, is it?
Yeah, I think that one should be a twist top. Yep.
Oh my God. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay.
Now, some people have actually asked me where this set is that we're filming from. And I've had to say, this is not a set. This is for real. In fact, if I asked Seuss if he could get off his bot to actually pour me a pint from the beer that he's got behind the bar, he could go and prove this actually isn't a set. This is for real. And I remember a year or so ago, we actually went and we brewed our own beer as well.
We did. Yes, we did.
And how easy is it to do?
Well, specifically where we went to do it.
There really is no magic behind making beer. For me, beer is basically this. You've got the grains, which are in, you either have to mash yourself and make the wort, which essentially you've got the mash and extract the liquids, or you cheat and you buy like a soup can that's already full of the wort for you, add some sugars, add some hot water, and then in time you've got your alcohol. But keep it clean. When you make beer, when you make any alcohol, it's sanitation, which is the most important thing. Now you can get by and be a little bit more careless with making wine, but with beer, hygiene is absolutely the number one thing. And my brother and I, with whom I used to make beer quite regularly, we had a theory that the music that you played whilst making the beer would actually make a difference. So if we made a beer, for example, and we had Keith Richards playing, or some Rolling Stones songs, we thought it was a better beer.
Well, we can't let this get warm.
Let's do it.
The old Vic bitter. Oh, that brings back memories.
Yeah, it's as Australian can be.
Yep. That's still not a bad beer. That's a good beer. It doesn't have any specific flavour like you do with modern beers where you've got flavoured beers now.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to drink.
Yeah, I think it is too. And I really think the feature of this beer is the pride of Ringwood hops. So it's a particular Australian hops, grows mostly in Victoria and also in Tasmania, and it gives that interesting finish that you get at the end.
Yeah, that's a good beer.
Like I said, as Aussie as, but there's been a recent development with VB, and what they've tried to do is, together with ratcheting up the alcohol content again with the VB to its natural level, they've actually come up with something else. If a lot is good, then even more
is better.
It is better. So I don't know if they're trying to out Aussie being Aussie, that is out Australian being Australian, but have a look at that. What do you see there? Because you've not seen this before.
I haven't. What? 6%? Ah, yes, it is 6%. But our stubbies always were 375 ml. This is only, 335? No.
I think it's actually even smaller.
250.
Yeah, it's 250.
Wow.
So what they've done is packed more alcohol into a smaller container. That one's for you, and that's from a mutual friend of ours. And you know who you are.
Okay.
So why don't you give that a try and tell me if you can detect a difference in the taste or if they've really just amped up the alcohol. See, what they're trying to do, this was very much a blue-collar man's drink, VB, and that's what you'd buy, particularly if you worked in the trades or you were a labourer or something like that.
Yep.
This was the beer, and it was marketed all about you. But now they're trying to compete against all of the beers which are designed to fascinate the palate and to draw different people into the market. So let's see how much of the character they've kept with this.
If I open this, we haven't got extra glasses
No,
here.
just
Are you
try
going
it
to take
straight.
a swig?
You take it straight from the bottle. Tell me what you think.
It smells different.
Well, they say jazz is not dead, it just smells funny. So you tell me what you think about that beer.
It smelled different. Now I'm tasting it. Doesn't seem to be taste different.
So, just looking at the shape of that bottle, it's very much that sort of grenade shape that VB has always had with the stubbies.
That is so easy to drink, on par with your standard VB. You could very quickly be on your ear with that, because it's so easy to
So
drink.
next time you see that in a store, would you walk past it? I know you've only had a few sips of it, or would you actually consider picking it up?
Now that I've tasted it, I know it's almost identical to your standard VB. It depends on whether I was interested in getting pissed or not.
Okay.
It tastes fine, same as your classic, with more alcohol. I can imagine younger people loading up with a couple of these before going out.
Probably not good.
No, rather than your standard one.
So with the CUB product, in Victoria, this was pretty much what was drunk in Victoria.
Yep.
When I was growing up, this is what people were buying. Worldwide, people know of Foster's, which is in the same family, and you'll find the same shaped bottles, and the labels will be a similar sort of design. Really, in Australia, Foster's is a little bit maligned, and it's not really that widely drunk. I happen to think Foster's is a very easy to drink beer. I'm probably one of the few people who stand up and say, I would buy and drink a Foster's quite happily.
Although the Foster's sold overseas is a different recipe made with different water. It tastes different. The overseas Fosters is not the Fosters that we grew up with here.
Gotcha. Well, we're talking Aussie,
Yep.
and we're really getting as Aussie as we can possibly be. We've got the VB, and then we've amped it up. We've added some steroids to it, and we've got the Victoria Bitter VX bitter. X. Can we get more Aussie?
I don't know, can we?
Well, I think so.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Now, for Australians, you might remember a man who held at one stage the world record for downing a yard glass of beer.
Yes.
He also happened to be an Australian Prime Minister from 1983 of the Labor Party
Yes.
and heavily involved in the trade unions. What do you think of this?
Oh my God, yes. Ha ha. For those who don't know what we're talking about, Bob Hawke, who was our Prime Minister.
And he described his relationship with the Australian people as being a love affair. It was his love affair with the Australian people.
Yeah.
And one of his claims, apart from the fact he was in office for a very long period of time, was that he never was actually voted out of office by the Australian people. Recently passed away. Like I said, one of his claims to fame was his prowess on the bottle. But why don't you do the honours, open it and let's see what it tastes like. I thought I'd bring this as a ring-in.
Do you care to
Sure, I'll
take the first? It's not Carlton United.
Go for your life as well. No.
Huh. Okay.
So not what I expected, because you really don't want a lot of fizz. You don't want carbonation. If it's a beer that you want to drink quickly, this is quite highly carbonated. Now, the taste is actually very pleasing. It's a lower alcohol. It's 4.2, so it's quite a standard sort of alcohol. But actually very, very drinkable. It's not overly hoppy, but it still does have some character.
That's very drinkable. Oh, any beer is pretty drinkable. Except to that place we went to a few weekends ago, where we had a sampler of
We did have a
beers.
misstep with the MIDI beer, didn't we?
Yes.
So I would like to know, if you're Australian or you're English or American, or from somewhere else in the world even, I'd like to know what is the home product of beer? What was the staple of beer for the last 20 or so years in your country?
I don't know what the beers are like where you come from. But you see, this is what we call our standard long neck. We already covered this. 750ml, 750. Now, back in the old days, our cans that we're drinking out here, this is a find that came into our possession. This is an old school order form from the pubs to Carlton United breweries when they needed to restock. So you'd have your different varieties of beer, whether you wanted a full pallet or a half a pallet of your packaged beer we're talking about. Have a look at this.
Yeah, and which is the first product which is on the list for the bottles?
Victoria Bitter.
It's Victoria Bitter.
It's,
exactly what
yeah,
we're drinking
and the
now.
same on the cans, and
Yeah.
it follows along the whole
Yeah.
thing.
And interestingly, Foster's being the number 2 one, the one that's
Yes.
after that.
Yeah. This was in the early 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a piece of magic, that.
But 750ml cans. Oh, 740ml cans. So a can that size is what they used to sell.
It's magic, isn't it?
So they used to sell cans of beer that size, and we used to call them depth charges. They were like trying to hang on to this can of beer.
Just a point of interest, this beer has been brewed since 1854, which is going back a long, long time for Australia. But Seuss, what do you reckon the oldest brewery in Australia is?
In Australia,
And still operating?
wouldn't be Castlemaine, would it?
No.
Or Ballarat.
No,
Ballarat.
I'll give you a very strong clue. In my house, I've been talking about getting some plumbing to go in direct to the brewery, which I can almost see. And that's the Cascade Brewery in Tasmania. If
Really?
you look it up on the internet, it's one of the most beautiful looking breweries that you'll ever see. It's overlooked by Mount Wellington, which is snow-capped about 7 months per year. And they've got beautiful Cascade Gardens close to there. And on a Friday, if I'd walk home, I'd be able to smell what they were brewing that day. Then it was
Yeah.
just absolutely fantastic. Still going.
Cascade. I would not have pictured that. I would have said probably Ballarat.
So that's going back to the 1820s anyway. If you think that's old, I've got a surprise for you. I've just recently returned from a trip to Germany, And Weihen Stefana, this is the oldest continuous running brewery on planet Earth. If you have a look at it, actually sports in German, älteste Brauerei der Welt, so the oldest brewery in the world, and it says seit 1040, that's since 1040. Now they've actually been brewing beer for about 260, 270 years before then, but that's when they really became a commercial operation. There was a hop garden in the area, and they paid tithes to the monastery, and beer was produced there at the monastery. But I would love you to try that as well and see what you think, because I mean we've got the oldest brewery on earth. Why don't you open it? I'll get you a glass.
I hope that the beer isn't back from then. Oh, you guys like this, by the way? Check it out.
So just proof this is actually a working bar, not a set. Please. Now this is a Pilsner style. Pilsner really just comes from the name of a town which is now in the Czech Republic. But any Pilsner basically is a lager. And a lager means that really it's a cold yeast beer. Now I reckon there's a priest in that family because that's got quite a head on it.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I may have some glazed cherries back there. Well, it's a wrong glass to start with.
Well, at short notice.
That's not bad.
Prost.
Oh, that's different altogether. That's got a much stronger flavour. This is a flavoursome beer.
Yes.
These Aussie beers, not a whole lot of flavour, but incredibly easy to drink.
Yeah.
It's very satisfying. This is in a totally different league.
Yeah, it is. It begs your attention. Probably because Australian beers are designed for hot climate, and they're designed to be easy to drink. It's certainly not like a draft beer, this Australian beer, whereas this is... See, I find it kind of hard because with language it's always a bit of a misnomer if they say this is Victoria bitter, so you expect something which in fact is very bitter. Now bitter is not a different sort of beer. Bitter is just a lager beer. It just happens to be that the people who produce it decide that, well, it's actually bitter to the taste. But I would argue this is probably more bitter, and
yes,
it's more
is
challenging, but
yes,
it's also more satisfying for that reason as well. The body of it is a lot, I could almost say that it's thicker.
If I was knowing what I know now, having drunk this, I mean, price is always a factor.
Yeah.
And I've always liked the Vic Bitter, or I was never much of a fan of the Carlton Draft. But the Vic Bitter, if I was to go into a shop and see that and see this, and if the prices were the same, I'd go for this.
Yes, indeed you would. I mean, they've been doing it since 2040, and they've finally got it right.
well, it's done. About bloody time, I would have thought.
But the price is a big difference.
No, obviously, yeah. I would have thought so, being an imported beer. But just to tell you the difference, if I had a choice, the price was the same, I'd go for this one every time rather than a Big Bitter.
So it's a win for the Germans over the Aussies?
This time.
And does Bob Hawke get a charity vote?
Well, only because he's got his face on the can. That's not a bad beer. No. I don't mind that at all.
Well done.
This beer has got flavour. Like I said, these beers don't really have a flavour. They're very easy to drink, and in hot weather, that's what you want.
That's what you want.
I like it.
Thank you. And if you like our videos, what should they be doing?
Well, they should wait a minute, because you haven't tried my beer, which is also Australian.
I didn't know there was another ringer coming in, but let's try it. Okay, you've piqued my interest.
The difference is, I'm going to pour it straight from the keg.
Now, it really is a very easy thing to make your own beer. You can buy at places like Kmart in Australia beer making kits, where essentially what you get is a plastic tub. All you really need for the beer making kit is the wort, which is basically like your soup can, which is full of the liquid, and maybe some dextrose or some sort of sugar to go with that. Like I said, sanitation is really the most important thing, and you want to make sure that it's water sealed as well. So at the top, you've got the little seal which is put on, and it's filled with water. It's a bit like the S-bend, and it bubbles away, and it makes sure that the carbon dioxide, etc., can come out, but no impurities or bacteria can come in.
Now wrap your lips around that one.
Yeah, the nose is just wonderful on this. It's wonderful. It's a bit fruity as well.
Yes. Now this is obviously it's a copy of the Stone and Wood, which is a craft beer. I have another craft beer there, which is 150 lashes. Because who doesn't like 150 lashes, let's face
Again,
it.
going back to our convict past.
That's
going
it.
Back to that history.
This is amazing. And that's where I get all my tap beer from. And we get it from these wonderful people where we actually brewed our own beer.
We did. That would be the beer factory, wouldn't it?
It would, which is them there. And they have got, what? They've got at least 60 to 70 beers there. Pretty much every variety that you can think of in your commercial beers and craft beers that you see on the shop floor, they'll have a recipe for it. And you just tell them, this is the one I want. And they'll sit you down and go through the whole thing, and you get the experience of making it. And then you can either bottle it or can it.
There wasn't an awful lot of work going on when we were supposed to be making it, was there?
We were sampling and we were making sure that the quality control was there. We were keeping right up with the quality control.
We were picked up after the job. We didn't actually have to drive ourselves home. Very easy process. There really is no magic behind making beer. It's sanitation.
Oh, wow,
making
that's
sure
good.
you've got the recipe right, and away you go. And pretty much they can vary. If you go to a place like this, they can vary the wort that they give you. They can vary the sugars that they give you. It's just a very easy practice to do. And they've got ample size vats that you can pour everything into with the hot water, and basically away you go. And everything can be put into a container, chilled, basically. See you later, come back in a week,
Yep.
and the beer is basically ready then.
Yep. But the whole thing is that if you're brewing it at home, now you will all have experienced this, you'll always get a sediment at the bottom. You'll always get a sediment at the bottom of your glass. At this place, when you do it, at the finished product, before you actually can it or bottle it, or in my case, I'll put it in the keg, they put it through a 5-micron filter for you. No sediment.
No sediment. And funnily, I mean, in Australia, Cooper's is now the 4th biggest selling beer. It's the biggest family-owned beer venture in Australia. And they pride themselves on giving you a beer that has sediment in it. So you pour it and it's cloudy, and you think, I'm not really sure what to think of that.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I think that one day when they were bottling it, their filter broke down, and rather than throwing it out, they put it out there as ours comes with sediment. Same as orange juice with pulp. It's more authentic because we have sediment. So they eliminate one process and sell it at the same price. How good's that?
That's good, isn't it?
That's profit.
That's good, but
I
it's
love
authentic.
it.
It's authentic.
Yeah. If you're ever looking to make your own beer, the Beer Factory, brilliant. I think we've covered it.
I think we just about have, but we will do a short step into American beers soon.
That's a good idea. Don't forget, guys, if you like what you're seeing, it's a pity you're not here to finish these off with us.
It is.
But it's okay. We'll work through it. It's a job that has to be done, and we're volunteering to do it. Have a good one, guys.
See you,
Don't forget
folks.
to like and subscribe.